Hey, welcome back to the show, MetFlex and Chill. This is Rachel Gregory, your host, and today is a solo episode where I'm going to be chatting about keto for weight loss. So I wrote a blog post a while back where I dove into several of the benefits of using a ketogenic diet for weight loss, more specifically fat loss, and also chatted about some of the kind of misconceptions and misunderstanding that comes with implementing a ketogenic diet, and also diving into some of the specifics depending on where you're actually coming from, or what I like to say, what side of the spectrum you're on when you're looking to lose body fat, right? So those are some things I'm going to talk about today. Again, this is based off a blog post I wrote. So if you'd rather read this blog post or follow along while you're listening to this, you can check out the show notes. I linked it in the show notes, or you can just go to metflexlife.com/blog/keto-for-weight-loss. I will link that in the show notes, or you can just go to my blog or go to my website and click the resources tab. It's a drop down menu. You'll see it says blog there, and you can check out any of the blog posts I've written by going there. And you can also search for any topics, anything that you are interested in, related to fat loss, body composition, building muscle, keto, all that jazz on my website. And yeah, so before we get into the episode, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor for the month of January, Active Stacks. If you don't know what Active Stacks is, they are a company that produces non-GMO beef protein, which is a great alternative for people who may be sensitive to whey protein or just don't like consuming whey protein, or if you don't like some of the plant-based options that are out there as well. Beef protein can be a great alternative. So Active Stacks makes both chocolate and vanilla flavored beef protein, and the chocolate, I always say this, my chocolate is my favorite. When I make it, it tastes like a chocolate frosty. It's freaking amazing. So definitely check them out. You can go to activestacks.com/discount/chill if you want to check out their products and get a 10% off discount. I will link that in the show notes. And without further ado, let's get into keto for weight loss, the truth revealed. So in recent years, the amount of information circulating about keto and the ketogenic diet on the internet, on social media, in bookstores, all over the place is pretty insane. There are so many different quote unquote experts out there telling you how to follow a quote unquote proper keto diet, why you need to do it this way or that way, or giving you hundreds of different reasons why you're not seeing results. I get it, trust me. Even after years of following a low-carb lifestyle, I still get overwhelmed by all the information that's out there and have to reel myself back in when it comes to focusing on the specific goal at hand when we're talking about implementing a ketogenic diet, right? So here's the thing. Keto is powerful for many different reasons. Heck, there's new research coming out weekly on the benefits of keto for brain health, blood sugar regulation, disease prevention, anti-aging, fertility, cancer prevention, treatment, the list goes on. But, huge but here, if you're implementing or wanting to implement a ketogenic diet for the main goal of losing weight, or more importantly, losing body fat, then you have to understand that keto is not a magic weight loss pill. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but being in ketosis does not necessarily equal weight loss or fat loss. Ketones themselves are not the cause of fat loss. They are simply the result of fat metabolism. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Then why would I follow a keto diet if my main goal is to lose weight? Well, following a low-carb keto diet and being in a state of ketosis can make it easier to lose weight for several different reasons that I'm going to get into in a minute. Realize though, and I talk about this all the time on this podcast, every person is different. And in my personal coaching experience, there seems to be a spectrum where keto works great for some people and not so great for others when we're talking about fat loss. Generally speaking, I think everyone can benefit from going through a period of fat adaptation, also known as getting into a state of ketosis and hanging out there for a while. because this helps to build metabolic flexibility. Again, something we chat about all the time in this podcast and what this podcast is named after. Metabolic flexibility is simply the ability to respond or adapt to conditional changes in metabolic demand. So in basic terms, this just means that your body has the ability to efficiently shift back and forth between the two primary fuel sources, fat in the form of fatty acids and ketones, and carbohydrates in the form of glucose. Okay, back to the spectrum I just chatted about. So on one side of the spectrum, we have those who are sedentary and overweight or obese. On the other side of the spectrum, so let's say that's the left side of the spectrum. On the other side, or the right side of the spectrum, we have those who are active and lean in general. This is a general spectrum. Not everybody is sedentary and overweight, and not everybody is lean and active. There are people who can be sedentary and lean, and there are people can be overweight and active. But in general, when we're talking about in general, which you're going to hear me say in general a lot during this podcast, but that's the spectrum that I'm kind of using to kind of quantify what we're talking about here. So again, on the left side of the spectrum, we have people who are sedentary and generally overweight or obese. And then on the right side of the spectrum, we have those who are active and lean. And then there's obviously people floating between those two extremes, right? Most people are probably floating between those two extremes or closer to one side than the other. So generally speaking, again, if you're closer to the side that is sedentary and overweight, you'll probably thrive using keto as a weight or fat loss tool. If you're closer to the other side and generally active and leaner, then keto may not be the best option when it comes to fat loss. To piggyback off that, there tend to be differences as well when it comes to males versus females and, the overall success that happens with keto or implementing keto. So this is, again, and I talk about this all the time, this is one of the main reasons why I created my Keto for Women program, which if you're interested in that, it's not live now, but you can click the link in the show notes and sign up if you're interested in learning more about it. And when the next round will go live, you'll get on the list for that. But that's the main reason why I created the Keto for Women program, to help women pinpoint some of the areas that may need a bit more attention compared to males. You've probably heard sometimes in the past people say, my husband had such great success on keto, lost all this weight, but I've been struggling a lot. And there's different things that happen with women, right? Our hormones are a little bit more sensitive. We have different things going on. And so that's why keto can be a good tool, but you have to know kind of how to navigate it. And that's why I created the Keto for Women program. So again, you can check that out in the show notes if you're interested. But again, we're talking in general terms here. So there's always going to be outliers and specific scenarios that warrant different approaches when it comes to any fat loss goal. So does that mean that those who are leaner and more active should never try a keto diet? No, that's not at all what I'm saying. Hence everything I just mentioned earlier about metabolic flexibility. Plus, there are some people who are closer to that right side of the spectrum, the lean and active side, who do struggle with things like blood sugar control, sugar addiction, carb addiction, and just may overall feel better or adhere better with lower carbs. But just realize in the context of fat loss, and from my experience, someone who is on the leaner side and more active side may do better with more carbs in their diet, because if you are lean and active and you're trying to drop more body fat, you probably need to actually be focusing on building a little bit more muscle and fueling recovery so that you can build a leaner and more quote unquote defined physique. Again, we're talking in the realm of fat loss here, right? So someone who's leaner and more active may not actually need to lose more body fat. They may need to just increase their muscle mass, increase recovery, and carbs can potentially be helpful for them, right? So anyway, no matter where you fall on the spectrum I just mentioned, it's probably a good idea to understand some of the practical benefits of a keto diet for fat loss, right? So that's what we're going to chat about in this, the rest of this episode is we're going to talk about the practical benefits of implementing a keto diet for weight loss, because there are several, and it's a good idea to kind of understand those, right? So let's dive into number one. The first benefit is, and these are in my opinion, and based off of my research and my time over the past 6+ years being in this ketogenic or low carb space and diving into all the research, working with several different clients. So the first practical benefit of a keto diet for weight loss, in my opinion, would be appetite control and increased dietary compliance. So following a low carb keto diet can help to stabilize blood sugar and improve the regulation of hormones that contribute to hunger and satiety. Trying to lose weight plus constantly hungry throughout the day is pretty much a recipe for disaster. So those who struggle with blood sugar regulation or notice that carbs and sugar tend to increase hunger may benefit from following a keto or low carb protocol with the goal of fat loss in mind. Controlling appetite is the number one step in any successful fat loss protocol, in my opinion. If we're hungry all the time, all day long, how the heck can we expect to follow through with sustaining a diet? It's hard, right? We know hunger is going to come when you are putting your body in a caloric deficit. So any way that you can mitigate that for you specifically is probably going to be your best bet. So by stabilizing and improving blood sugar and hormonal regulation, it allows for reduced cravings, increased satiety, and usually less of a struggle to go longer periods of time without eating, which could contribute to an easier time sustaining a calorie deficit for fat loss for some people. Keto is very powerful at training your body and your mind to be able to fast for longer periods during meals or in between meals. It's literally a fast mimicking diet in the sense that it mimics the benefits of fasting while still eating tasty, nutritious foods. Some people thrive with incorporating fasting in their diet, others may not. Again, it's very individualized. But that would be one of the main benefits to incorporating a ketogenic diet for fat loss is it does tend to have a nice appetite control effect to it, and it can increase dietary compliance for many people. That's number one. Number two is it elevates and stabilizes energy, mood, and focus. So once you get past the first few days of limiting carbohydrates and start to produce ketones, most people begin to feel the effects of what I like to call keto euphoria. So because fat and ketones provide a readily available source of energy, and keto can help to stabilize blood sugar and insulin levels in your body, you don't have those constant dips and spikes in these levels throughout the day. And this can lead to not only appetite regulation, as I discussed before, but also a higher, more stable energy level, increased focus, and enhanced mood. Some people even argue that being in a state of ketosis allows your brain to function at its most optimal level. The human brain is made up of nearly 60% fat, so it's no surprise that our brains may actually prefer and thrive off of ketones. I don't know about you, but feeling good both mentally and physically throughout the day makes adhering to any diet protocol much more attainable. When we feel good, we tend to do better at any task or challenge presented to us. That's just human nature. So that would be number two. Again, this is very general, all right? Everybody is their own individual. Everybody has different history, different metabolic history. So these are general benefits that I've seen in my practice and through my research. So again, just realize this is general. So let's go on to number three. Another benefit of following a keto diet for potential fat loss and weight loss is it can make body recomposition easier. So do you really just want to lose weight, or do you want to lose body fat, feel lean and strong, look great in your clothes, in a bathing suit, naked, age gracefully, be strong and resilient, all of those things? Achieving that comes down to not only fat loss, but muscle growth and retention as well. So ultimately, changing your body composition entails two primary goals. And we talk about this all the time on the podcast: gaining lean body mass, particularly muscle mass, and losing body fat. So gaining lean body mass occurs in response to proper resistance training and sufficient intake of dietary protein. Those are the two main factors when it comes to gaining muscle: is proper resistance training and smart resistance training, and sufficient intakes of dietary protein, which I actually have 2 blog posts specific to both proper resistance training and sufficient intake of dietary protein. For example, like how much protein you should be consuming for you specifically, and then some of the areas to focus on when you're resistance training, some of the things that you must be aware of and implement. So I will link both of those blog posts in the show notes if you're interested in those. But the cool thing about keto is that research has shown that ketones can actually be muscle sparing, or what we call anti-catabolic. Anti-catabolic just means protecting muscle mass in the body from being broken down. Well, in this case specifically, anti-catabolic is, catabolism is just the breakdown of things. Anti-catabolic is obviously preventing the breakdown of things, right? So this can happen through mechanisms such as decreasing the breakdown of leucine, which is the primary amino acid responsible for muscle growth and preservation. There's actually studies that have been done that show this. The second thing is acting as a potent, and ketones can act as a potent anti-inflammatory molecule that can reduce oxidative stress. Research actually suggests that ketone bodies, particularly beta-hydroxybutyrate or BHB, may help reduce inflammation-driven catabolic pathways. Again, there's research that shows this as well, and I've linked some of those research articles in the blog posts if you want to check those out. So being fat adapted and consuming sufficient amounts of protein puts your body at a metabolic advantage. You can lose body fat while preserving and even potentially gaining muscle. I actually showed this in my own study on the implementation of keto in non-elite average Joe CrossFit athletes. I say average Joe because this study was done in your average Joe who goes to, including myself, who, I don't do CrossFit anymore, but people who just go to CrossFit to get a nice workout in. Maybe their main goal is fat loss and they're going there to get a good sweat on, do it in a way that's enjoyable. They have some competition. So that's what that study was looking at. And I did this study in grad school, and we had there was phenomenal results. So if you're interested in that study and looking at the specifics that occurred within them, I will link that in the show notes as well. It's also on my website, or you can actually just Google my name, Rachel Gregory, and CrossFit and Keto study. It should pop up right there. So again, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, people who are on this, the leaner, more active side of the spectrum may see better body recomposition from incorporating some more carbs, especially peri-workout, so pre and post workout, to help build and maintain muscle mass in a fat loss phase. However, there are lots of different ways to go about this, and also lots of different types of low carb keto diets to experiment with, right? So just as, and I've mentioned this before, there's keto is not just one way. There's so many different ways to go about implementing a ketogenic diet, right? Or a low carb diet. And it's different for different people and from where you're coming from as well, because a ketogenic diet really is just a diet that allows you to get into a state of ketosis. That's kind of what the definition is. It's not so much just okay, you have to eat this food to quote unquote be considered a ketogenic diet. That's really not how it works. So there's tons of different types of keto or low carb diets out there. So I actually have a blog post on that as well. So I will link that in the show notes, linking a bunch of things in the show notes today to my website, but there's a lot of information out there, or there's a lot of information. Well, there is a lot of information out there, but there's a lot of information that I've put on my website that may help to clear up some things and give you some different perspectives on different things. So definitely check those out if you're interested. So that was the third reason, or the third benefit, in my opinion, of implementing keto for the goal of fat loss specifically. The fourth benefit would be it exposes your body to a different fuel source, literally changes your metabolism. So this goes back to that metabolic flexibility side of things. So when you allow your body to experience being in a state of ketosis, you become less reliant on burning sugar and carbs all day, every day, right? Instead, you start to train your body to use fat and ketones for fuel. Why is this important? Because again, it puts you on the fast track to becoming more metabolically flexible. In my opinion, as you probably already know, metabolic flexibility is the ultimate goal we should all be striving for, especially when it comes to successfully maintaining fat loss while still living in the real world and benefiting from ketones while also consuming more carbohydrates. I chat all about metabolic flexibility on this podcast all the time. I have a blog post, again, that's specific to the benefits of metabolic flexibility. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I will link that one in the show notes as well. But really, kind of, in my opinion, the end goal for most people should be to be able to be as metabolically flexible as possible, so that you can go back and forth between these fuel sources and use them in the appropriate time that they are supposed to be used. So I always use this example, but being able to tap into your fat stores when you're sitting at your desk, throughout the day working, and you're looking to get, focused, or, and you don't want to be, having these constant ebbs and flows in your blood sugar. You're not, super, you don't want to be having these kind of hangry pangs that are happening. You're literally sitting at your desk, not very physically active. You should be able to use fat for fuel at this period of time, and even use ketones for fuel. So that's something that a lot of us can't do, because we're just so used to, living in this carb centric environment and sugar centric environment, where most of the foods that we're around have tons of carbs and sugar in them. So our bodies are just used to, consuming carbs and thriving off of, or not thriving, well, some are thriving, but used to consuming carbs and using carbs as a fuel source. And it's hard to tap into those fat stores to use those as a fuel source. So that's, one side of becoming more metabolically flexible, is you're able to use fat and ketones for fuel. And then, like I said, there's some benefits to that, especially when we're talking about ketones and brain function and mental clarity, and that concept that I talked about with keto euphoria. It is a real thing, in my opinion. I've experienced it many times. I've had most of the clients I work with, if they do go into a ketogenic state, they experience this keto euphoria, which is just really, good mental focus. And so that's a benefit. And then on the other side of being metabolically flexible is that you can incorporate carbohydrates to use, during periods that make sense, right? During physical activity, post-workout for recovery, to jumpstart recovery, maybe some hormonal regulation, things like that. Again, everybody's on kind of a different spectrum here, or not a different spectrum. Everybody's on the same spectrum, but you're on a different side, right? Everybody's their own individual in terms of where you're at in your life, your history, all of that. So it's really important to kind of understand that as well. But that would be the fourth reason. So exposing your body to a different fuel source. So those are the four main reasons that I personally think are the practical benefits of using a ketogenic diet for weight loss. So the first one, again, was appetite control and increased dietary compliance. Again, actually, let me mention, this is in general. Again, in general, not everybody notices these things. And also this can change throughout time, right? So this is why, for example, I have a lot of clients that I work with who have implemented a ketogenic diet for 6 months, and they have great results, and then they stop getting results. Or maybe they implemented keto and they had really great appetite control. Maybe they lost a good amount of weight. They started to regulate their blood sugar a little bit more. And then they found that, fats aren't filling them up as much as they used to. So that might be a time to start incorporating more whole food carbohydrates. So again, it depends where you're coming from. But in general, some of the practical benefits of using a ketogenic diet for weight loss are, again, appetite control and increased dietary compliance. It elevates and stabilizes energy, mood, and focus. It can make body recomposition easier, and it exposes your body to different fuel sources. So those would be the four main benefits that I see. So again, to wrap this up, keto can be very powerful for a lot of people when it comes to fat loss, for all the reasons I just talked about. But again, simply getting into a state of ketosis does not mean you will automatically lose body fat. And it's smart to consider the side of the spectrum you are closer to when it comes to implementing keto for fat loss specifically. So if you're interested in learning more about the benefits of keto, and more importantly, incorporating a plan and strategy that fits into your specific lifestyle, you can check out the programs that I offer, both the nutrition programs I offer on my website. I also offer exercise programs. So I will link those in the show notes, or you can just go to metflexlife.com/programs, and there'll be a list of the programs I offer, descriptions. You can see which one might line up with what you're looking for. And if not, you can also apply, or if none of those work for you, or you're not interested in those, you can apply for a one-on-one coaching with me where we dive into specifics for you as an individual, look at where you've been, where you want to go, chat about, nutrition, exercise, not chat about, but implement specific nutrition protocol, a specific nutrition protocol for you as an individual, a specific exercise protocol for you, and all that jazz. So you can go to my website, metflexlife.com/apply to apply for one-on-one coaching if you're interested in that. It also has some more information on what one-on-one coaching includes. So anyway, that's all I got for you today. And again, just kind of the reason why I recorded this podcast and, put this information out there is just because I want you to start to think about, there's no one way, right? There's no one way for anything, especially when it comes to diet, it comes to nutrition. There are, certain things that have been proven to work for for different types of people. And that's something that we just have to be aware of, right? The more educated you are on these things, the better off you're going to be in terms of what you can experiment for yourself and, what would make the most sense for you as an individual, and also what your goals are, right? Because that's obviously very important. So hopefully you learned a little bit from this podcast. If you are enjoying the podcast, if you're enjoying the content that I'm putting out, please make sure to share it out to anybody else that you think would be interested. You can also find me on Instagram. My handle is @rachelgregory.cns. I'm always on there sharing things on my story, posting too many videos of my puppy. And also I record other solo podcasts where I do Q&As. So I usually post a question box on my Instagram, either, every week or a bi-weekly basis to ask if you have any questions, and then I'll address those questions in detail on the podcast. So anyway, follow me on Instagram. I also have a Facebook. Go to my website, metflexlife.com. And you can also sign up for my weekly newsletter. It's called the Friday Flex. It comes out every Friday. And if you're interested in that, you can go to metflexlife.com/newsletter. And basically in that newsletter, I'm just sharing kind of the podcast for the week, a recap of them, a recap of my week, some things that I'm enjoying in terms of products or books that I'm reading, also sharing recipes, all that jazz. So sign up for that if you're interested. I promise I won't spam you. It's just a weekly newsletter, and you can always, get off the list if you don't want to receive them anymore. But anyway, that's all I got for you, and I will talk to you next time.